The world feels chaotic, like we're navigating uncharted waters. We grapple with complex issues, blindsided by events that seem to come out of nowhere. Economic meltdowns, political upheavals, social unrest. But what if the answers we seek lie not ahead, but behind us? This is the central question posed by renowned historian Niall Ferguson in his provocative subject, The Return of Anti-History. Ferguson argues that we are living in an age where history, the study of our collective past, is not just neglected but actively under attack. Imagine a world shrouded in a fog of ideas, a dense haze obscuring our view of the past. Ferguson argues this is the insidious nature of anti-history. It's about distorting history, manipulating it to fit modern narratives and agendas. This anti-history is all around us, in revisionist history books, social media, echo chambers, and classrooms. Ferguson warns that ignoring or rewriting history to fit modern sensibilities is a dangerous game. It's a recipe for repeating the mistakes of the past, for stumbling blindly into the same traps that ensnared previous generations. Niall Ferguson is known for his sharp wit and his unwavering belief in the power of history to illuminate the present. In The Return of Anti-History, Ferguson sounds the alarm about the dangers of historical amnesia. He argues that we are living in an era where historical illiteracy is rampant, impacting our understanding of current events and our ability to make informed decisions about the future. Ferguson's essay is a call to arms for a revival of historical consciousness. To understand who we are and where we're going, we must first understand where we've been. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information, yet we are becoming increasingly ignorant of our own past. Ferguson points to a growing trend of declining historical literacy, particularly in Western countries. Students graduate with a shaky grasp of basic historical facts, and adults struggle to place major events in the correct century. Without a sense of where we've been, we're like ships sailing without charts, unable to plot a course for the future. Ferguson argues that this historical amnesia is due to a lack of interest, not information. Imagine trying to understand a foreign film without subtitles. This, Ferguson argues, is what it's like to approach history without a solid understanding of context. Without a framework for understanding the past on its own terms, we risk misinterpreting events and drawing faulty conclusions. We impose our modern values onto the past, judging historical figures by standards that would have been alien to them. This distorts our understanding of the past and blinds us to the lessons it holds for the present. In the past, our understanding of history was shaped by books, scholarly articles, documentaries, and museums. Today, our historical landscape is increasingly shaped by the internet, social media, and sound bites. Historical narratives are condensed into memes and hashtags, their complexities flattened into simplistic binaries. This shift towards bite-sized history has led to a superficial understanding of the past. We skim the surface, absorbing factoids but rarely delving deeper. The result is a generation that is historically informed, but not historically literate. In an age of instant gratification, it's easy to see why history might seem irrelevant. Why bother with the past when there's so much happening in the here and now? This, Ferguson argues, is the siren song of presentism, the belief that the present is all that matters. But history is not a distraction from the present, it's the key to understanding it. By studying the past, we gain insights into the forces that have shaped our world and the mistakes we must avoid repeating. Imagine a courtroom where the defendants are long dead, judged by the moral standards of our own time. This, Ferguson argues, is the essence of presentism, judging historical figures by standards that would have been alien to them. While it's tempting to hold the past accountable to our modern moral compass, Ferguson argues that doing so is deeply unfair. It denies historical figures the context of their time, the prevailing beliefs and social norms that shape their actions. Understanding the historical context of those evils is crucial if we are to learn from them and avoid repeating them. Moral standards evolve over time, shaped by cultural shifts and technological advancements. What was acceptable in one era may be deemed abhorrent in another. To judge historical figures solely through the lens of our modern sensibilities is to engage in a dangerous form of anachronism. The past should be studied, understood, and judged on its own terms, within the context of its own time. This approach allows us to learn from history without distorting it. History is a vast and complex tapestry, woven from countless threads of individual stories and world-altering events. To understand this tapestry by focusing solely on a few select threads is to engage in historical cherry-picking. This selective approach is often driven by ideological agendas, leading to a distorted and incomplete understanding of the past. It reduces history to a simplistic morality tale, a battle between good and evil, with no room for nuance or complexity. Ferguson argues that this approach reinforces existing biases rather than challenging them. History is not a black-and-white morality play. It's a messy, complicated affair, filled with both moments of great inspiration and acts of unspeakable cruelty. To reduce it to a simplistic narrative of heroes and villains is to do a disservice to its complexity. Historical figures were flawed human beings, products of their time and place. To truly understand history, we must embrace its complexities, contradictions, and uncomfortable truths. Imagine a world where the very idea of a single objective truth is called into question. This is the intellectual landscape of postmodernism, which has had a profound impact on how we view the past. Postmodernism challenges traditional approaches to history, emphasizing subjectivity and the deconstruction of grand narratives. While this has its merits, Ferguson argues that it has also led to a dangerous form of historical relativism. This relativism suggests that all historical narratives are equally valid regardless of evidence or logic. Imagine a world where the Holocaust is just one interpretation of events, no more valid than the denials of Holocaust deniers. This is the dangerous territory we enter when we abandon the pursuit of historical truth in favor of relativism. When everything is relative, the past becomes a malleable entity, shaped to fit any agenda. Ferguson argues that denying the possibility of historical truth is to abandon the very project of history itself. It's to surrender to intellectual nihilism, where the past becomes a meaningless jumble. History is not just about facts, it's about interpretation. Historians sift through evidence and draw conclusions based on their understanding of the context. Different historians may arrive at different interpretations, and that's what makes history dynamic. The problem arises when interpretation morphs into ideological distortion, twisting historical narratives to serve contemporary agendas. We must distinguish between legitimate historical debate and outright historical fabrication, being wary of those who would rewrite the past to fit their own narrow worldview. Reclaiming history from the academic bunker. History, Ferguson argues, is not the exclusive domain of academics and intellectuals. It belongs to all of us. It's the story of our collective past, a rich and complex tapestry woven from the lives of countless individuals who came before us. Yet too often, history is seen as irrelevant, something to be studied in school and then promptly forgotten. Or worse, it's seen as a weapon to be wielded in the culture wars, a tool for scoring political points or settling old scores. Ferguson calls for a reclaiming of history from both the ivory tower and the political battlefield. He urges us to engage with the past on its own terms, to grapple with its complexities, and to resist the temptation to reduce it to simplistic narratives or ideological talking points. He reminds us that history is not just about dates and names, battles and treaties, it's about the human story in all its messiness and grandeur. It's about understanding who we are, where we come from, and what it means to be human. The perils of repetition. When history ignores us. Imagine a world where the hard-won lessons of the past are forgotten, where the mistakes that cost millions of lives are repeated. This, Ferguson argues, is the dangerous territory we enter with anti-history. History offers a stark lesson. Those who fail to learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. It's a warning whispered through time. Yet humanity stumbles over the same obstacles, repeating errors that lead to conflict and collapse. The ghosts of decisions past, echoes in the present. The past, Ferguson reminds us, is not some distant, irrelevant echo. It reverberates in the present, shaping our world in countless ways. The decisions made by those who came before us, the battles they fought, the ideas they championed, all of it has brought us to this point in time. The borders on our maps, the languages we speak, the values we hold dear, these are not accidents of history. To understand the present, we must delve into the past, trace the threads of cause and effect that have woven the tapestry of our world. The erosion of wisdom, a crisis of leadership. In an age of anti-history where the past is seen as irrelevant or worse, a tool to be manipulated for political gain. Leaders, stripped of historical perspective, become reactive rather than proactive. History, at its core, is a study in leadership. It's a chronicle of decisions made by men and women in power. The consequences of those decisions, both intended and unintended. It's a treasure trove of case studies in what works, what doesn't, and why. Beyond the rubble rebuilding the bridge to the past. The consequences of anti-history are all around us, Ferguson argues. They're in the shallowness of our public discourse, the volatility of our political systems, the short-sightedness of our decision-making. They're in our inability to learn from the past, to see the patterns and cycles that have shaped the human story. But Ferguson's essay is not a lament for a bygone era. It's a call to action, a rallying cry for a revival of historical consciousness. It's a plea to rebuild the bridge to the past, not to dwell there, but to draw strength and wisdom from its lessons. This revival, Ferguson argues, must begin with education. We must equip future generations with the tools to think critically about the past, to distinguish between fact and fiction, to recognize the dangers of historical distortion. But it's not just about classrooms and textbooks. It's about fostering a broader cultural appreciation for history, a recognition that the past is not some dusty, irrelevant relic, but a living, breathing entity that shapes our world in countless ways. The urgency of now, a call to action. The hour is later than we think, Ferguson warns. The fog of anti-history is thickening, obscuring our vision, leading us down dangerous paths. The consequences of inaction are too great to ignore. We stand at a crossroads, he argues. One path leads to a future shaped by ignorance, by the repetition of past mistakes, by the unraveling of the very fabric of society. It's a path paved with the rubble of forgotten lessons, littered with the wreckage of decisions made in the absence of historical understanding. The other path, while more challenging, offers a glimmer of hope. It's a path illuminated by the wisdom of the past, guided by the lessons learned from those who came before us. It's a path that requires effort, critical thinking, and a willingness to grapple with the complexities of history, both the inspiring and the appalling. The choice, Ferguson reminds us, is ours to make. We can continue to sleepwalk through the present, blind to the echoes of the past, or we can awaken to the urgency of now, to the vital importance of historical consciousness in shaping a brighter future. History's guardians, our legacy, our responsibility. The past is not some dusty relic, Ferguson reminds us. It's a living presence, shaping our world in countless ways, visible and invisible. And we, the inheritors of that past, have a responsibility to be its guardians. This is not about memorizing dates and names, though that has its place. It's about cultivating a deep and abiding respect for the complexities of the human story, for the struggles and triumphs, the failures and successes that have brought us to this point in time. It's about recognizing that history is not a static entity, frozen in time. It's a dynamic and evolving narrative, constantly being reshaped and reinterpreted in light of new evidence, new perspectives, new understandings of the human condition. As we navigate the challenges of the 21st century, facing issues of unprecedented complexity and consequence, let us remember the words of philosopher George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Let us choose instead to be the generation that breaks the cycle, that learns from the mistakes of the past, and that builds a future informed, not imprisoned by history.